The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is a Star Wars edition. Today, we're talking The Last Jedi, which was set in the last movie. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, you know him, the man wielding the saber that's gonna cut me in half, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
I believe he's tooling with you, sir.
Just rewatched that part.
Yeah, well, I was trying to do my best Vivian from The Young Ones, because that is Ade Edmondson, a.k.a. Vivian from The Young Ones.
I feel like we've touched on this, at least in the last episode, but this is a major gripe for me in these trio of movies. How kind of dumb and hapless they make the baddies.
Oh. You know what's funny about that? The way you set that up, you could have said literally anything afterwards. I had zero idea what was coming out of your mouth. It was
well, when you talk for 4 fucking hours, it literally could be anything.
It was like complete this sentence. By the way, there are no wrong answers. Yeah, that's interesting. That hadn't even occurred to me. Obviously, I have the gripe about slang, which that quotable also speaks to.
Sure.
Although, tooling is one that bypassed me completely. I'm sure it's out of date by now, but I don't remember when it was in vogue.
No?
Is that a term you've heard before?
I figured it was a British thing because the guy has got a British accent.
No! We're both equally oblivious in two totally different ways.
Oh, man.
I love the fact that you were just like, it's probably some British shit.
It's gotta be a British thing.
No, I believe it is contemporary. It was then contemporary slang, but I have not heard it outside of the context of this film.
Yeah, no, I've heard of calling somebody a tool.
Right. I do that a lot. That is certainly.
Of course you do.
But
I work with this fucking guy on a podcast. You can't believe this fucking tool.
And I call you a tool, by which I mean that you can fix things well. That's what I mean when I say that.
Oh, I'm not sure that's true if you listen to the last few episodes. I'll apologize to our listeners for our technical problems.
Yeah. You sounded
hopefully it was mildly masked.
I loved it because you sounded really angry and I sounded really mellow. And I think in terms of the content of what we were saying, it was reversed. But just the audio made it sound like you were the one who had the real gripe, and I was the one who was just chilled out about it all.
Well, I'm hoping this one works. All right, Tom.
I'm sure
here we are. We're talking The Last Jedi. This is a film directed by Rian Johnson, who you've already said you hated. You hate Brick. I assume you hate the Brothers Bloom. You don't like Knives Out or The Glass Onion.
Not seen half of those movies. The Brothers Bloom? I don't even know what that is.
That's when he got a bunch of money after Brick. That was his next film.
What kind of a movie is it?
Kind of con artist. It's Mark Ruffalo and...
Yeah, I probably would hate that.
Adrian Brody. What about Looper? Do you like Looper?
Never seen Looper. I've always been too afraid. I don't like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I like Bruce Willis. But
God,
that combination...
You hate so many people.
That's not true.
I've run out of room on my paper to write it down. I gotta go digital for you.
With post-1960, mostly. You know what I mean? I'm not like No, I mean, like,
just the past 65 years almost.
up till about 1960, I'm pretty good with any Hollywood film star and or director. After that, it's a lottery.
All right. Well, this film, remarkably to me, has 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is simply not accurate.
Yeah, that's...
No. I braced myself for that because I reminded myself that the divisiveness of this film is all in the fan community, and that I seem to remember critics going for it in a big way.
Okay. Well, that's what happened.
Yeah,
I don't know what the critics were smoking, but I myself called this a good film at the during our ranking. Somehow these movies ratcheted up, and you were not surprised by that, but I was. In terms of my ranking, I mean, I thought for sure I'd call this and the next movie bad.
I think
because they're not good, but I'm calling them good.
The critics are responding to the filmmaking that's on show here, I think. But I think those who are coming in from the point of view of attachment to the franchise have understandably a different point of view, because in some ways this is a desecration of everything Star Wars, but purposefully so, and in an artistic way, which I think is what maybe the critics are responding to.
Right. I think this movie, I think I said this in the ranking episode, or we both did, this movie takes some swings. Now, if you want to bring up directing, I would say that this movie feels uneven. There are moments that I think are directed very well, and there are moments where I think, meh.
And the tone of it is more challenging than most of the Star Wars movies. That's true. So I can see why this would be a critic's darling, while at the same time alienating the people it was made for.
Mm-hmm.
I see good people on both sides, Mike, is what I'm saying.
That's your new catchphrase.
I guess I should say there are heroes on both sides, so that it's not directly quoting Trump.
That would be smart. Yeah.
It would just be quoting the line where Trump got it from.
Yeah. Well, a budget of $317 million, which will lend to the argument that I'm going to give that this is actually 2 fucking movies and not one. But an opening weekend of $220 million. In the USA, it actually made $317 million, and in the world, $1.3 billion, which is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And it's it was the peak of this trilogy in terms of because from this is as popular as it got, and then from this point onwards the movies start to get unpopular again, and unpopular and unliked, and I think reaction to this was mixed, and then the reaction and viewing went downhill after this, right?
Yeah, well, I have good news for you. I just got back from a backpacking trip. One of my leaders
That is good news. We wouldn't be able to do the podcast if you hadn't.
Yeah. One of my leaders, Reese Reinhardt, is about to turn 21 years old.
Okay.
So she was not able to go see, say, The Phantom Menace in a theater and remember it in any kind of way, obviously. Yeah. But she loves those movies, and she thinks they're the best of all. It was so interesting to listen to her defend those movies, and I thought, you must have watched them when you were 4. And they're made for 4-year-olds.
Yeah. But I think, I don't know, if you see the kind of the sort of upswing in prequel tolerance, I think it's kind of inversely proportional. No, I think it's inversely proportional to the decline of this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the surrounding movies within the Star Wars canon made around this time.
I don't know. It just interested me because on their face, they're so busy they just don't even look like good films. These 3 films look like good films. When you dig underneath it, there's so much that's wrong with them.
It's the content that's busy, not the style.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's they don't have, that visual incoherence of the prequels is translated here into narrative incoherence.
Into narrative incoherence. You're right.
Well, that's all we need to say, I think, right? That's it. We're done here, everyone.
Yeah,
There you
well,
go.
I think we summed up these 3 movies. We don't even need to do the next fucking episode.
People are looking at their phones now going, oh, well, I guess that explains why this episode is 5 minutes long.
We solved it.
Although, based on the previous episode, me saying 5 minutes probably means we've been talking for about an hour.
Yeah, well, I came into this episode prepared to say, I'm going to give you 90 seconds for each paragraph of the scroll.
Oh, okay.
And that's it. I'm keeping you to a time limit.
What a sad state of affairs we're going to have to...
I don't want to get 25 minutes into this podcast and still be talking about the fucking scroll.
I have to consider each of my comments like a chess move now.
Exactly.
Because of my terrible record on brevity.
Well, let's start at the top. Lucasfilm only. Every time I see this now for these 3 movies, honestly, it makes me sad.
Yeah.
So no 20th Century Fox.
It's a sad state of affairs.
I can't remember. Did we talk about this? Because
yeah, we did.
I like the restraint that there is at least no Disney logo. I appreciate that.
Well, we had the conversation where we were ambivalent because darkness and silence doesn't really kind of lead into the opening fanfare, but because of the recent attempt in the last Indiana Jones movie to turn
to shore that up,
the Lucasfilm logo into something that happens in the movie, that
into a door frame
best
or a door lock.
Probably silence and darkness isn't ideal, but the alternative is unthinkable.
All right, now the scroll, go.
Okay, starts with a short declarative sentence followed by a longer one with only one clause in it. The writing has improved. I'm just reading my notes now.
The First Order reigns.
Yeah.
At least I think it's the next movie where we get to exclamation points.
Well, this is actually a good time to cut me off, because my overall note about the crawl is this is the most unnecessary opening crawl I've ever seen in a movie, because they made the decision to pick up the movie directly after the ending of the last one.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing has happened in between, by definition.
Yeah.
So this movie could be crawlless.
And it could be scrollless, but what's funny about it is when you juxtapose this scroll against, like, the Phantom Menace, it's filled with words that seem like you're reading something from a movie you want to see. That's
a very low bar, though. There's no news.
Resistance
here.
has been exposed. They have to make a desperate escape.
We know
Things
that.
like that sound good.
But we saw that at the end of the last film, because lest we not forget, this movie picks up seconds after the end of the last one.
I understand.
This is pure Karate Kid 2.
We're in the parking lot.
Or Porky's the Next Day. This is the Porky's the Next Day of the Star Wars films.
But here's one of the things I want to talk about, because we always talk about, so you have the scroll, and then with all these films, it's always a pan down.
Yeah. They
don't fuck with anything but a pan down. But then Rian Johnson wants to get a little tricky with a push in.
It's a very extreme version of that traditional downward trajectory shots.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of, he goes from space to the surface of the planet. in a kind of sci-fi homage to the opening of Psycho.
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what he's going
Except
for.
it doesn't look good. The ships, actually, it's one of the first times where I'm noticing the ships don't really look quite as good as they do in these 3 movies. It all looks a little awkward. I don't know.
I thought it worked. Whenever I admire Johnson's direction in this movie, it's usually when he does something kind of bold and striking, and I think this is a really striking opening to the movie, and I'm all
See,
for
I
it.
think he goes for bold and striking, and I don't think it comes off that way for me.
For this particular shot,
Yeah, just this particular shot.
I prefer it to the halfway house of the dick silhouette in the last one, which was just like it was just a lot of awkward shadows, whereas this feels like it's taken a piece of visual iconography from the Star Wars films and done it and put its own spin on it.
Yeah,
And I like that.
You were not sure where the balls were in the last one. You're like, there's balls hiding in there somewhere.
That was the problem. It had no balls. and Ryan Johnson has balls,
Yeah, right.
as we will go on to discuss.
Well, my next note is that Lux appears to be working on no sleep. He doesn't look good.
Lux? Who did you say? Lux?
Lux.
Who's Lux?
Isn't that his name? General Lux?
General Hux.
Hux. Oh, maybe I'm saying that.
You're thinking of smoked salmon.
Maybe I'm saying that because Poe was fucking with him so much at the beginning. So
That's fair enough. He doesn't call him by his actual name, so why should
rev
you?
up his booster engines.
Well, first of all, I mean, we've got the first sign that the storytelling in this film might not be optimum. When we get to the surface, we have a completely natural conversation between 2 resistance fighters that just happens to tell us everything we need to know.
Yeah, right.
It felt like a scene from an Ed Wood movie. with a lot more money behind it.
With a ton of money behind it. You're right.
So one of them is Carrie Fisher's daughter, and the other one is like Ryan Johnson's friend, I think. So,
Oh, is that young actor? She's Carrie Fisher's daughter? I don't think I knew that.
She is, yeah.
Okay.
She's Carrie Fisher in the 3rd movie. She's the body of Carrie Fisher.
That makes sense.
So, well, first of all, let's talk about the first kind of U-turn of characterization that I noticed. The idea of Poe as a rogue pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Completely new, and only for the purposes of this film.
And that's it, right.
No, there was no sense that he was a maverick who played by his own rules. In fact, the opposite. In the previous film, he was on a mission.
Well, it feels to me like they're trying. At least Ryan Johnson thought, I'm going to give this motherfucker an arc for at least one film.
Does it amount to an arc? If you just
I think he learns a lesson. He doesn't.
It's more.
He doesn't have to fly off the handle and waste a bunch of lives. He tries to learn some restraint. Maybe he doesn't learn that lesson until the next movie. You might be right. You might.
Yeah, it's not really an arc. It's more of a sort of like a ring pull. We just he keeps fucking up, and then they say, "Don't do that," and he says, I'm being rebellious," and then
but
they go, "Oh, okay, but don't do it again. You did it again."
But along with it, he's always talking to a superior who's a woman, so there's that added effect of, I'm the man, I know better.
Oh, and I worry how much of it is actually called out in the course of the movie. Some of it is, but not all of it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, sometimes it feels very 1970s in outlook, not just style.
Yeah.
I mean, when he first sees General Holdo or Admiral Holdo, it feels very 70s to sort of going, she was not what I was expecting.
Right.
This kind of feels very much like, a woman, doctor? Are you crazy? And some of that is called out because, he he's acting outside he's like acting outside the lines.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that is compartmentalized in his kind of his mutiny as an act of toxic masculinity. But at the same time, I feel like the extent to which he gets away with that behavior in the movie is also quite troubling.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's 2017 by now, so the things we talked about in the last movie that came before Me Too and that kind of thing, where the filmmaker seemed to be taking into account gender and on equal footing how they should be, and this movie does feel like it regresses a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. But we got plenty of time to talk about that.
All right, can we talk about bombers? Because I don't understand bombers.
You talking about the jokes?
I'm talking about slow-moving, dead ass in the space ships that seem to have almost no purpose.
Still sounds like you're talking about the jokes in this scene. As much as you try and convince me. Well, first of all, I want to say 3 separate jokes here, all of which die. Right, that's a terrible ratio for a stand-up, and for comic relief in a movie, it's an absolute disaster. So yeah, bombers. Well, it's sort of. I get it iconographically.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
get it.
Going back to the World War II dogfight origins of the of the original Star Wars. There's a bit of Doctor Strangelove in there, and her kind of the fighter having to manually release the bombs.
That's one of my next notes, was that without a single line of dialogue, Rian Johnson did make me, in the span of just a few minutes, care about that character. She mattered to me.
And then chooses to kill her and replace her
she dies.
An inferior version of the character, who is her sister. She has this character has her own surrogate within the frame of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot I like here. I'm not too keen on the casting of Aid Edmondson. I think we should be going for British character actors, not famous British comedians. That we should be.
Oh, is that the general or the?
He's the guy who says, "I believe he's tooling with you."
He's tooling with you,
yeah. I mean, you might as well put Rick Mayall in that at that point. I mean, there's no difference there, but. The general, once they get into the fight, there's this big blustery Welshman.
Him. I was thinking of him first.
And it's exactly what I want from the modern day Imperial, because it's like it's it reminds me of Piet. It's just a good actor who sells the role. That's all you need.
That's who I thought you were talking about at first.
Oh,
no, I was gonna push back. I thought, comedian or not, I don't know him, but I like that guy.
He's great. No, the guy who says, "I believe he's tooling with you, sir," is Aid Edmondson. Second,
I also like the look he gives when he sees the bombs drop and he knows he's gonna die. It's great.
Definitely, it is. It's a great look, and also like what they do with C-3PO in the scene. They have a good moment between him and Leia. Yeah. Interestingly. In both these movies, C-3PO is introduced without an establishing shot. In both of them, he just appears.
Yeah, he just appears. Yes, you're right.
It may be the only thing that Rian Johnson doubled down on from Force Awakens. But it's a good bit, take that worried expression off your face.
Take that worried expression off your face is funny. Yeah,
and we all know he has an expressionless face, and yet he's somehow. Anthony Daniels is still able to convey that bodily, and so it's a nice understanding of how that actor and character works, I think.
Absolutely.
And probably one of the most successful comedic moments in the movie, which is a problem because we're only a few minutes in.
Because they go for a lot.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well, like, having traded in BB-8 for... Having traded in R2-D2 for
R2
BB-8.
for BB-8, yeah.
It seems like all they want BB-8 to do is what George Lucas already did with R2-D2 in the prequels. Make him fly, make him able to essentially do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just stick with R2-D2?
Well, it goes back to your toy theory, Tom. They need more toys.
even as I was saying it, I knew that was really the answer. I was trying to suspend disbelief in my own mind that was the obvious reason why.
But having said that, I mean, I really like BB-8 in all of these movies. I understand your point about him doing a lot of the same shit that R2 does, but
I have no beef with
I
the
like
robots in any of these
BB-8
movies,
as a character.
except the one played by J.J. Abrams.
I have no problem.
Okay, but he's not doing anything different than R2 could have done.
I understand.
If he wasn't a sad old bucket at this point. And I guess it's unfair. It's unfair to criticize a stylistic tendency that wasn't as overused at the time as it is now. But I'm tired of seeing these experiential battle perspectives where it all goes quiet and it's like got this shell shock audio effect where you see like what I feel like once something like that has appeared in a Bond film, that's the end of it, because Bond films are the last adopters of every stylistic tendency of filmmaking, right? Once it's done, it's like
I'm pretty sure we had that way back in 2006 with his first, Daniel Craig's first in Casino Royale.
No, did we?
I think so.
No, because it's a very specific thing where it's like white noise in the background, someone experiencing as if it's like cinematic shell shock.
Yeah.
And I'm just tired of it. I can't watch it. I can't watch another film with it in. There's got to be another way of doing this.
I don't imagine that audience members are tired of it beyond you, though. I think...
Why? But why would they not be tired of seeing the same thing done in exactly the same way? Like anyone else?
Oh, I think it just conveys exactly what the filmmaker... They're trying to put you in the place of that character, and I think people are sucked in easily by that.
Again and again?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why they keep doing it.
Interesting. It's very tired, so going back to it, and it's not fair because maybe this was one of the early adopters of that, but
I don't think so.
It feels very tired at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
It's something I like, and this kind of introduces something that I like about Johnson's use of nostalgia as opposed to J.J. Abrams is like they reference things that have happened in Star Wars movies in a way that doesn't feel kind of empty or neutral. It's almost like they pick up an idea and run with it as opposed to, hey, remember this? Well, it's exactly the thing you remember, and now we're putting it away. That's how J.J. Abrams does nostalgia, whereas the moment I'm referring to here is
what are you talking about?
Let's start there. That's where I should have started this point. When Leia basically after they blow up the big dreadnought, is it that they
dreadnought?
Call it?
Yeah.
Leia falls back into her seat in a way very reminiscent of Admiral Akbar in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Which was equally then a moment of victory, and yet it looked like a defeat. And it's one of the few moments of subtlety in all of Return of the Jedi, because it's kind of this moment where he should be celebrating, but he's actually relieved and a little melancholy.
Yeah.
And there's a touch of melancholy there, and Leia's doing the same thing, and it just feels like rather than referencing something that is low-hanging fruit, they've taken a complex moment from a previous Star Wars movie and kind of pointed it up in a really meaningful way.
What I like about those moments is it's what it reminds me of is sort of in the trenches of, say, World War II, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the toll that actual war and battle takes on the people, including the leaders.
Right.
And so I that's what, to me, I think they're hooking into in those moments, and that's what I like about it. That even in a space opera, you can find those moments that feel honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a callback with that, like you say, has kind of meaning within the context of the story now, which the nostalgia in the last film, and I think the next film is severely lacking that kind of context,
subtlety.
Just the relevance and the applicability to what's going on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this feels very grounded, like you say, in the fact that this is like it's about the ambivalence of battle.
Yeah, it feels cheap in other movies. You referenced Han Solo saying trash compactor.
Yeah, that is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. Yeah. You're dead. It's that Napoleon quote about the only thing worse than a victory is a defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but also it's in English, so I obviously am already paraphrasing. But that's to me what it's conveying, and I like that there's connective tissue between that and what Akbar does in Return of the Jedi, where
Sure.
could miss it in that movie, but they're pointing it up here in a way that is kind of I find quite pleasing.
Well, meanwhile, Finn's gonna wake up in his water suit, his healing water suit.
We're gonna have some slapstick hospital antics.
Yeah.
Bet you never thought you'd see that in a Star Wars movie.
Now, we've talked around this a bit, but of course he wakes up and Poe finds him, and the first thing he says is, "Where's Rey?"
Yeah.
And so there's this weird thing going on where this movie seems to forget that Rey has no interest in Finn beyond friendship. And the last movie seemed to show us that Finn was very interested in Rey in a romantic way. That none of these movies can work around because they decide that Baby Vader and Rey are going to be more connected than any of...
You mean Ren?
Oh, yeah. But,
I love both the Freudian slip and the fact that it'd be kind of cool if Kylo Ren took the name Vader, like a divorced kid who sides with the bad parent.
Right.
I'm calling myself Vader now. Yeah, and unluckily for Finn, I suppose, Ryan Johnson is as uninterested in Finn as Rey is, so it works out pretty well.
That's true.
He couldn't care less, which and I think John Boyega has spoken to that. Really, he didn't feel like he had anything to do in this movie, and that he was underused. And
well, but I mean, he could have made that argument for all three movies.
He could, but I think it's very clear here that he's the odd man out in terms of having something to do.
Well, because Rian Johnson's too focused on Luke throwing away that fucking lightsaber.
So let's talk about this, because we've both insinuated somewhat differing reactions to this moment.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty clear how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great bathos. I think it's a brash move for the character and the director around. I think it's a really good subversion of expectations, sets the tone for the rest of the movie, shows the kind of irreverence of Johnson's approach and towards the Star Wars mythos, and that he's here to contradict and challenge what you think about Star Wars. So I responded to it because of all of that.
It certainly got a laugh out of me the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything that you're saying right now, but I think I fall down on the side of Mark Hamill, who said Luke Skywalker would never do any of the things that he's doing in this movie. And he knows Luke Skywalker.
I disagree completely. I think this is very consistent with the Jedi, and even Luke Skywalker as a Jedi. But anyway, this particular moment is kind of interesting because a lot was made about the problem is that Luke's not enough of a hero. He's they play him as if he's past his best, but they also play him as if he's immature as well.
And
the throwing of the lightsaber seems to me to convey a kind of toy throwing tantrum of a child, which Hamill as much as he disagrees with the interpretation, then goes on to play really well. Like, I
He
get
does
a
do
lot
it
of
well.
whiny farm kid Luke Skywalker in these opening scenes.
I agree with that, but I guess my problem with it is that with everything that Luke went through in those first 3 movies, I think my natural instinct is to see him become a sage, wise person and not that bratty kid still. I'd like to see that.
I think he is a sage, wise person. I think, I mean, yeah, he's, he's being a big ham about it, which is consistent with the Luke Skywalker characterization we've seen. even through Jedi, delusions of grandeur, fucking up the Jabba escape plan with his own hubris. That's consistent with Luke Skywalker, but also, what he's his viewpoint on the Jedi and the Force. He's probably the wisest Jedi of them all.
Okay.
And obviously, like, I think even Johnson knows that the next movie's going to walk all this back, regardless of
Oh, I don't
how
know
much
that he knows
everyone
that.
hated it. Well, I think there is a sense of it. It's set up in a way in which this can all be walked back at any point. This can all be reversed, and he starts to reverse it by the end of this movie. Actually, I think so.
Yeah,
That characterization is kind of partially unwoven.
Well,
But
I think
love
he
that they
undoes that walking back by having it be
I mean, you listen to
a
some
Force
of what
hologram. But we'll
You-
talk about that
well,
later.
Yeah, but that's smart as well, because that gives you the hard-boiled hero that fans want without compromising the character that he's become in the context of the film.
Okay.
He makes so much sense when he talks about the Jedi and the Force and everything he's been through and what should happen. Like, I think he's it's that they're casting that in a dark light. It's like something he's gonna have to get over and have to be.
No,
talked out of.
I admit I was way more drawn to it on this viewing than I was when I first saw it. I thought it was a big.
I mean,
we talked
yeah.
about the big swings, and this is of course a big ass swing, and I respected it
Yeah.
a lot more on this viewing.
Yeah, but I never watched it and thought this doesn't feel like Luke, or this doesn't feel like an older Jedi. Like, both are precedented within the series, so I don't really understand where the dislike for this characterization came from.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not inorganic to the series, and that's the way it's been depicted.
I don't know. There's just something about it where I'm like, this doesn't feel.
It's
like
not what
my
you
Luke.
wanted, right? And I think that's kind of the point. It's not what you wanted, and that's the point. And
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson sets out his stall early enough. It's like, you're not going to get what you want.
You know what I think is part of the problem?
That was the other guy's job, right?
Yeah.
He likes doing that. I like to challenge your expectations.
You know what I think part of the problem
Take it or
was
leave
that
it.
not having Luke at all in the first movie,
Sure.
and then having an entire second movie of I don't want to go. You know, like,
Yeah.
that's 2 double bummers in a row where you're just
Yeah.
like, can we get on with, fighting this battle and seeing Luke do something other than catch fish?
I don't know. That's the other thing that I agree that, like, you can definitely fit it into the template of why are all the legacy characters such a bummer now? Like, definitely that's part of it. But
Well, Luke has
I
a
feel
reason
like
to be a bummer. I'll give them that.
he has a reason, and the other side of it is that I think he finds a kind of cool within it that R2-D2 is the sad bucket and Han Solo is, the deadbeat dad. Doesn't really, like, you just feel the sadness, but they don't play. Luke doesn't know he's sad. He's just getting on with his life and the way he thinks is best for him and the rest of the galaxy. And I find little faults with his
his thinking.
With his thinking. And I think that's maybe the problem is that, you know, I just don't. I think everything he says is about the Jedi and the Force is too valid to be ignored, and yet I know inevitably the movie has to ignore it, or we won't get a third movie.
Well, then Chewie shows up, right? And
great entrance.
Because I thought it was Rey force busting the door at first. Yeah.
Although the only thing I would have done differently is, and there's still time to add this in, by the way, Ryan. I know, I've probably not in your best books right now, but if you want to go back and re-edit it, I actually want to see the moment where Rey's like, "Look, he's not coming," and then Chewie's like, "Right," and he just slams it, and I want to see him march up that hill with his arthritic knees, which only exists in my head, but he's definitely got.
That's great.
But it's a fantastic entry. I think, you know, it's now Chewie doesn't have Han. You've got to
see, but that's one moment where I thought to myself, why doesn't Luke know that? Couldn't he feel that terrible tremor in the Force? 1,000 oysters screaming out.
He's cut himself. Did you say 1,000 oysters?
Doesn't Obi-Wan say something like that?
1,000 oysters? Why would it be oysters?
I don't know. When they
voices.
Destroy Alderaan, what does he say?
He says 1,000 voices, not oysters.
Voices. That's okay. Fine.
What do you mean? Okay, fine. Like that was a confusion. That he was saying oysters. You know the fishing planet of Alderaan. Help us. So
I remember thinking that when I was a kid, and I drew on it.
It's like, it's perfect. It's the perfect kid reaction. So I think it's a really good entrance. You've got to make Chewie more central, but Chewie can only really be a supporting character because we just can't spend the time translating every single thing he would have to say as the lead of the movie.
Yeah, right.
So he has to be kind of like somewhere between the center and the sidelines, and I like what they do with him in this movie because, you know, when you need him, he'll come in and be a big character in the story, and then he'll recede into the background and go play with some cute animals for the rest of the time. So
yeah,
I think it's a good decision.
All right.
But and this was, you know, heavily criticized, but it's, you know, the reaction to Han's death, just the like look down from Chewie and Luke realizing that his friend is dead. The problem is they don't share a scene together, but there's nothing you can do about that now. So this is about as affecting as it can get.
I just always wonder why Luke didn't feel that within the Force. You said just because he's cut himself off?
Well, not just. I mean, that's everything, isn't it?
I would still think he'd feel his friend dead.
He can't feel anything. Isn't that the point? Don't they make a big point of that later in the movie? That as soon as he plugs back into the Force, Leia's like, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" And he's like, hang up. Which says to me that like he's kind of cut himself off from anyone he could sense or who could. Yeah, I don't know. That's my interpretation. That's not necessarily true.
Well, there's so much different Force shit between each of these 3 trilogies and each movie within each trilogy, especially prequels and these latter sequels.
I feel more and more vindicated depicting the Force as a kind of global internet on the basis of these 3 movies. That's for sure.
Yes, right.
You just got to hook up to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And you're in.
I will say that I think Snope looks when you finally see Snope in person, I think he looks about as good as he could. And of course it's Andy Serkis, so
Yeah.
You know, he's fairly intimidating and menacing.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure it'll become clear, but there are two stories I like in this movie, two stories I don't, and I think it's probably pretty clear that Luke and Rey is one of those stories, and then the other one is Snoke and Ren, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Those are the two stories in the movie that for me work fairly well overall. And I love again, like Bathos, you thought Snoke was a giant, and he's just a...
No, I said Snoke, didn't I? I wrote Snope
in
my notes.
You said Snope, and I was debating on how much I want to correct you after 1,000 oysters. I feel like you've really taken the burden of that, and it was time to give you a break for one letter. So I was fully prepared for the next 4 or 5 hours, or however long we're going to record, for you to say Snope, and I wasn't going to correct you. But you corrected yourself, so it's all fine.
God, the nerds must be so upset.
Sure, yeah, we'll be hearing from some of them in our pitching episode.
Well, Kylo has another temper tantrum, and he destroys his helmet.
Yeah, so Snoke is the other part of Snoke that's a surprise is his dress sense. We got no sense of that from the big hologram that
the golden robe.
He had like a 1970s disco outfit on under there.
Yeah.
So I really like the fact that he's just normal size and he's kind of dressed very 1970s.
He does look like he should be at Studio 54.
He does. Or that he's been through Studio 54 and this is what came out the other side once the club closed. But
now that I think about it, he does kind of look like Mike Myers in Goldmember. Yeah. He looks a lot like Goldmember.
He does. I did wonder, and I'm not entirely sure what part of this is practical, what part of it is digital. So I had mixed feelings about that. Like, could we not just have like Andy Serkis with prosthetics rather than... I know motion capture is what he does, so...
Yeah.
It's a better...
But that's what I meant. I thought, like, I would rather see Andy Serkis...
Yeah.
...in makeup, but considering that they went with this digital thing, I think it looks about as good as it possibly could.
And so much better than it did a year before with Tarkin, so they've already come on, like, leaps and bounds within the space of a year.
Yeah.
With what they can do with digital faces, because there are moments when it genuinely does, you suspend disbelief that there isn't a person there.
Right.
Yeah. And you never got that with Tarkin for 1 second. Yeah, and Snoke's got his Snoke's notes for The Force Awakens.
Very much so,
You're defeated by a child in a mask, a girl who's never held a lightsaber.
Which doesn't usually happen in these movies.
I think, the best trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people that... Well, that, definitely. What's underneath the devil? Because whoever that is, I think, is responsible for Kevin Spacey. But just the regular devil couldn't come up with anything that malevolent, I don't think. A guy who's like, people are starting to believe might be innocent. And that's a special kind of evil.
Yeah.
So, but everyone seems to have bought into this idea, including Snoke, that Luke is in any way a threat to their neo-fascist galactic order. Like, he's while there's Skywalker, there's still hope in the galaxy. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be ironic because at this point, Luke doesn't even believe in himself.
Well, also, most of the galaxy, I would assume, based on the last movie, think he's a myth and wasn't real.
Well, that's the other side of it doesn't make sense. And yet everyone is absolutely certain that you can't fight the First Order without him, including the head of the First Order, which to me makes absolutely no sense. But yeah, to go back to your point, smashing the mask. Lots of early signs that whatever we established in the previous movie might be actively sabotaged here with this act of wanton destruction of a mask that proved unpopular with many fans.
Well, don't worry, it's going to get walked back.
It certainly is, yeah. They have a chimp fix it and everything's fine.
Yeah.
That's not even a joke, by the way.
No, yeah, no.
Go back and rewatch that movie. It's a straight up chimp who fixes that mask. Not even an alien chimp, it's just a chimp. Luke also has some very valid story notes for The Force Awakens. It's almost like a Gremlins 2 level of critique of what they did in the original. He was like, "What's so special about you? Why are you here? Why did you come here?" Like, yeah, good point.
Where the
Why are
fuck's
you
my
here?
sister?
Yeah, of all the people who could have come out and made an emotional plea, why is it the person I've never met before who looks about 10 years old?
I told you, she's the Jedi on the rise. He has to train her.
Well, he doesn't. So that's another thing. I guess that's another doubling down. Like they set up this kind of building on the martial arts film aesthetic that they built in the end of the last movie with the final shot. I don't know. I seem to remember reading somewhere that was part of like Johnson's request, like that that he wanted it to end that way so he could build from there. But even if he didn't, I like that they sort of
build or tear down.
Yeah, well, I mean, you ask J.J. Abrams to do something, he's still going to do it like J.J. Abrams, so you still have to undo it all anyway. But they continue that idea with the scene of the apprentice following around the master, trying to convince them to train them. Like that's a very
I mean, she's going to watch him
scene.
Drink breast milk and fish, and then
You
she's going to
you don't like it?
She's going to sense books.
So, how do you feel about Luke milking the giant Wattos?
Oh, I think it was pretty funny.
Okay, 'cause a lot of people really dislike that.
Oh, why?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, I like it because it's an efficient way of showing Luke as a farm, like reminding us that Luke was a farm boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of reverted to that, and he's in a sort of state of arrested development. And I just love the way that the Lego Star Wars is kind of run with Luke constantly drinking milk throughout I think this really this also reminded us that he was a big milk drinker. And I like that. And I want to ask you something. I think I may have Mandela affected this, and
okay.
I didn't go back and rewatch it. Oh, you probably did today. You probably rewatched this bit today, didn't you? Did you get this far?
The milking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that far.
You go as far as the milking. So, am I remembering this right? Does the giant Watto try to make eye contact with Rey, and then she has to look away?
I don't remember her looking. I thought she not like looked away. Well, I thought she just panned from the creature to Luke, and then it was that shot of him just fucking milk. Isn't this great?
I could have sworn there was a shot of like he's like while he's being milked, the giant Watto looks her in the eye and she looks away. Anyway, I don't know. That if not, then that's how I would have done it. Yeah, she senses the books. It's more cave business, more Rey being telepathically led to objects, which is another reason why they should have saved it for this movie, because it would have made more of an impact if it started here. If it wasn't like already an established pattern of behavior that she wanders off, and his voices telepathically that lead her to find.
It makes way more sense for now because she's sort of in a place for Jedi to be trained. Like, all of a sudden you could imagine her kind of drawing that power.
Yeah.
But Luke won't teach her. What does he say? He's like, I came here to die.
It's time for the Jedi to end. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, there's no real. The movie doesn't give us a compelling reason why that shouldn't be the case. But I mean, I like to even. I quibble with the some of the finer points of the dialogue, But the routine between them, where he asks where you're from, and she says nowhere, and he says no one's from nowhere, and she says Jakku, and he says, well, okay,
that's pretty much nowhere.
I would take out pretty much. I think it needs for full impact, but even without that, Hamill's line reading, it just reminds you what a strong comic actor he is when required, and it's not really something we've seen with I guess a little bit in Star Wars, like him and Han, with him trying to press buttons in the cockpit and that kind of things, but it's never been this kind of assured, kind of mature comedy that we see. Yeah, I agree. And he does it very well, and he reminds us that Hamill's kind of like continually growing as an actor in gravitas through the years, and we just
absolutely. And
haven't seen a lot of it.
You know what's one of my favorite things about Mark Hamill's performance in this movie? His voice sounds like his impression of Harrison Ford.
You're so right. And I wondered about that, and I wondered whether that was the rationale behind them having him quote Harrison Ford's Han Solo.
Yeah, right.
During the battle with Kylo Ren. So I feel like they exploit that a little too much, but absolutely, that is exactly what his voice sounds like.
That's good stuff.
And then it's time to go back to Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, because Poe's got to get demoted.
I mean, my thought now is, you remember this is not Battlestar Galactica, right? They're not trapped on a fleet being pursued by Cylons.
All right, so actually, why don't we take our first break, because we're about to get into the gas conversation that I very much want to talk about for this movie.
Yeah,
because
this is one I think you're gonna
I don't
win.
understand anything about it.
There's nothing to understand,
and I'm hoping you can help.
No,
it's so stupid.
I can only hinder.
All right, well, let's take our first on-time break for this episode. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here sussing out The Last Jedi, the 2017 film directed by Rian Johnson. We didn't really mention that, or did we? Did we mention in the ranking episode, these movies are 2 years apart as opposed to 3?
Yeah.
And that accelerated timeline feels like it hurt the trilogy overall.
For sure.
Like they just rushed it too much.
But 2 years, 5 years, if you don't have an overall plan for the trilogy, it's never going to work. So, I know the accelerated time frame hurt it, but I also think if you gave them 10 years, I actually don't think it would have made much of a difference. I feel like they were just... I feel like they just had no end game.
Well, I've been saying all along that I think this movie is 2 movies.
Yep.
And one of the reasons I say that is absolutely it feels like the end of this movie, not the end, the first ending of this movie feels like a huge end to a movie.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for Laura Dern. Golf clap. Well played, madam. And then there's 40 minutes more of movie. And I remember hearing something along the ways that this was part of the plan, that was supposed to be the end of the movie. And then Rian Johnson didn't want to trust somebody else with the next part of the story or some shit like that. And he took it for himself.
He might have been vindicated there.
Cobbled, Well, maybe.
But your point stands. It's not his purview. He should have made the second act of the story and moved and left someone else to do. I totally agree. I think that is one of the big narrative weaknesses of this movie is that it tries to end the trilogy within the space.
One of two big narrative weaknesses in this movie.
Oh, I'm not saying it's
the other is going to Planet Monte Carlo.
Oh, I think there's some
45 minutes.
I think I think that's on a par with what we're starting to talk about now, which is the mutiny subplot.
Mm-hmm.
The mutiny plot quadrant, which was sounds like a very bad science.
Yeah, I mean, we're
novel.
basically there now. We're going to start that story because Poe gets demoted and he doesn't like that, and he's starting to work against.
This is all like it's like a subpar episode of Battlestar Galactica, and like Johnson forgetting that is already Star Wars twice removed. So why would you go? You could have the water straight from the fountainhead, or you could go for the diluted version. And you have questions about fuel?
Yeah, my note is we're talking about gas and speed. What the fuck?
Well, it's interesting because they answer a lot of small plot questions like, how are they tracking us? A cloaked binary beacon. Okay, if that's the sci-fi gobbledygook answer, that's fine. But why is this slow pursuit happening across space? Like it
makes no sense.
So that's the question I want answering.
This entire series opened with one big ship overtaking a small ship.
Yeah.
Presumably because it was bigger and had better engines and could overtake it.
Sure. Yeah.
So the idea that they could just kind of not outrun them, but kind of stay somewhat distant enough is something we've never heard in Star Wars before and feels completely made up.
Well, yeah, they have to. All of this has to be retrofitted. They started the process in Rogue One, where you see when they're stealing the Imperial plans. One of the plans they get before they find it is a plan to do lightspeed tracking. So they've kind of set that up, and then of course Solo will, retcon that in between prequel and original recipe Star Wars world as being like a fuel war essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they use the Star Wars stories to try and answer these questions rather than answering them.
But Solo comes out after this movie.
But that's what I mean. Like they retrofit that into as if it was always there in Star Wars. But this is the first time we've heard about it. And in Solo, it kind of makes sense because it gives it a kind of Mad Max quality, which works for that movie. But in this movie, it's total plot convenience.
It's weird to put it in a movie that hasn't come out yet to explain what happened in this movie that you've already
You're
seen.
preaching to the choir here. I'm the one who thinks it's time for the Jedi to end. But the good people at Disney aren't listening to me.
No, yeah. Or George.
I think George would be happy for it to end. He's talked about it ending a couple of times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or listening to George, yeah. This is the problem with, you mentioned they were trying to give Poe an arc, but they have these little mini arcs that kind of go back. Well, they're just circles. They're not arcs. They're just circles because they keep going round and round. So, Leia's dressing him down. She demotes him. Says, something to the effect of don't get into a spaceship and blow something up. And then at the end of the scene, she's like, get into a spaceship and blow something up. I'm like, well, that scene was pointless.
Yeah,
why am I watching this? What am I watching this for?
On top of that, I mean, Laura Dern and Carrie Fisher, they have a couple scenes together, right?
Not yet.
Or at least one?
Oh yeah, they have a scene together later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to suss out, was Laura Dern always a part of this movie, or did she come on after Carrie Fisher died
No.
as a surrogate?
No, that's the other thing. It's like there's nothing. None of this is a reaction to Carrie Fisher's death. I actually think that they should have re-edited the movie to accommodate for her death, but we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that. Just do whatever they were going to do anyway, even though they fucked themselves.
Well, when she gets exploded out that window, I thought, problem solved.
They definitely... I think that is really ghoulish. They should definitely have taken that out of the movie. That should have been their first... they can put that, sugary tribute to her at the end of the movie, but you're just not thinking if you think that is in any way respectful to someone, to someone who's just died, to have that visual in your movie. I think that's really distasteful.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I fall both ways.
Given that she could have survived in so many different ways that you could have created digitally without her being there, seems it's not like she's flying in space for real. That itself is you could do whatever you want with that image because it's not really her.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not quite there yet. But Ben is getting some telepathic time with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess we are at that. By the way, I'm talking a lot of shit about this movie, but there's not really, for me, anything on an effects level that doesn't work. Like, we're entering, the perfect marriage of practical and digital. All
Except
these
for
space
that
battles
first shot of those ships, I think it's almost flawless across the board.
Yeah. But we're already walking back, so, because he decides not to kill his mom. Is that what they land on, or do they do he gets interrupted by everyone else trying to kill his mom?
No, I think
he'll happily kill his dad.
they intimate that he can sense her and he lets up. But then somebody else.
Well, I guess we know who his favorite parent was. Then I guess we don't have to ask which of his two parents he preferred, given what he did to the other one. Yeah. So, yeah, this is essentially they attack the ship and Leia spills out into space.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the Leia Poppins moment. So, we were there anyway, but I think it's distasteful. I think they should have reshot or recut it after the death, but it's already unintentionally comic and too unscientific for the series anyway.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
I think they should have drawn a line under it and go, this didn't really work anyway, and now we have a compelling reason to take it out of the movie, so let's just take it out of the movie. Yeah, and I like with you, I'm thinking, well, you could have avoided all that digital avatar nonsense if you'd run with this story, or I don't know, put it later in the movie or something, just as
I don't know,
just as they were leaving, so Poochie could go back to his planet. I don't know.
Also, I'm starting to wonder now, because if they attacked with TIE fighters, what prevented them from stopping, just keeping that up? So that we could have the gas race? What?
I seem to remember at, strategic moments in the storyline, someone on the Imperial side has a line to the effect of, I'm going to explain now why we're not taking this opportunity to blow the fleet up now. And it's always something like, oh, it's better we can pick them off, but we make them weak and then we essentially let them hang themselves.
We've done enough damage to weaken them and now we'll just wait. Okay.
So they're not a threat by the time we finish them off. I don't know. I think it's all convenience. I don't think there really is a reason. This storyline doesn't work.
Yeah.
But, I mean, very clearly, it's on a hiding to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you what I do like, though.
Chewie eating porgs?
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this isn't already a Disney Plus series, by the way. Chewie and the Porgs. I mean, how have they missed this marketing opportunity? I guess it's just because fans rankled at the Last Jedi. Otherwise, how is there not like Chewie and the Porgs movies, TV series out there? Where do you stand on the Porgs?
Oh, I think they're pretty funny.
I'm very pro Porg
Yeah.
because I think they're cute. I like
Absolutely.
the look of them. I think they're funny, and
I like
think
this mini arc of Chewie. With
yeah, it's more as
I think it's
compelling as
great.
anything in the movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I also think it solves the Ewok problem. Because my problem with the Ewoks is not everyone else's problem, the Ewoks. I actually quite like them as an idea. I just think they're too tied into the plot of the movie. Whereas here, I like that the Porgs are just at the fringes of the movie. They're just sort of... They seem to be in the right place. They're not affecting the plot too much or too little.
Right.
And that means,
I remember,
again, Chewie's like the perfect double
perfect
with
complement.
Because Chewie can't be in the movie too much either, so he can go off with the Porgs.
I remember, the first time I saw it, and then on this rewatching, because I'd forgotten, I had remembered Chewie trying to eat a Porg and then seeing them and kind of losing his bloodlust for some meat. But once they left Planet Ireland, I thought that we were done with Porgs, and so when they show up in the Millennium Falcon later, it really it got such a big laugh out of me.
Yeah. Oh, it was probably
so
my
funny.
biggest laugh of the movie. Yeah. So I really like how they use it. In general, I think like the creature design and the use of creatures is pretty strong in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Space Monte Carlo's its own thing, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But outside of that, I think there's a lot of really good stuff.
I'll tell you what doesn't work for me.
The dice.
Yeah. This is probably when I quit.
Is that where you were actually going?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because that's my next note.
Mine too. Yeah.
When I saw the dice, the first time I saw this movie in the theater, I thought, "Oh, you're gonna fucking start selling me Solo now? Go fuck yourself. We've never seen these dice before. How dare you?"
Come on, we all remember the dice.
God damn it! It made me so mad.
We all watch Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy, in a ratio where you could definitely see the dice. Yeah, it's like, it's retrofitting. It's the same thing as the fuel, right? They need two movies on either side doing all the narrative heavy lifting for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a minor detail that was made into a big deal that it didn't need to be. But this scene, I really like the R2 Luke reunion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not quite sure why in this trilogy alone, R2 is always cursing. People are always saying, seem to be reacting to him as if he's cursing up a storm. Maybe it's part of his saddle bucket descent that he's
maybe.
Now...
I seem to remember the original trilogy. There's lots of watch your language.
But they're just
from
sassy,
3PO.
Sassy remarks, I thought, rather than this. It seems to be pure, he said the N-word or something. You can't call him that. Of course, he was a stormtrooper, but that doesn't excuse it.
Yeah, right. He probably has some choice dog terms for Chewbacca or something like that. 3PO's
but
like, hey!
This scene clarifies to me how Johnson's approach to nostalgia in Star Wars is completely different from J.J. Abrams. When
the cheap move?
When R2 does the projection and then he says that was a cheap move. And it's like...
Yeah.
You could tell, the scene to me is all about how Johnson's continually fighting the impulse to do nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. Got this trilogy into trouble up to this point. And it's just like, no, there's another way to do this that is more critical, that's more... that recognizes nostalgia for what it is and how dangerous it is, essentially, because it's
sure.
That's thematically what the movie's about. Is do we do we go back into the past and repeat those mistakes, or do we move on? And it's articulated again and again throughout this movie. And I'm team move on.
Yeah.
I'm team. It's time for the Jedi to end. But but the movie's articulating both sides, I think, and that's a more interesting approach to nostalgia than we had in the previous movie.
Absolutely, I agree.
Whilst at the same time getting those nostalgia feels that everyone wants, so it's actually quite
Sure.
clever. It's like a clever.
Yeah.
It's a double con.
Yeah, and we get, like I said, we get Chewie losing his lust for fresh meat. So there's a vegetarian there's a
great
vegetarian
reaction shot.
agenda for this movie as well.
Their reaction shot of the. Well, he's still. I mean, he's already killed it by that point. I mean, you might as well eat it.
Yeah, right.
Even vegetarians would be like, "Well, don't waste it now. You've killed it.
You already killed it. You stupid asshole."
That reaction shot of the porg, I think, is one of the
Really
best
funny
moments in the movie. Yeah, they go right up. They go right up to the line of cartoon.
Yeah.
With that, but it's right on the line, like, and then Space Monte Carlo is over that line.
Oh man, I'll say deeply, way over that line, miles over that line.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what doesn't work for me though is this speech that Laura Dern gives. It sounds like dialogue written by a high school student.
It occurred to me that Space Laura Dern in this movie is more of a cipher than the version of Diane she plays in Twin Peaks: The Return, who is a cipher.
Yeah, right.
Who's like not actually a real person, but has been sent from the lodge to move the plot along within the world of the film, world of the series. Yeah. No, but but in Twin Peaks: The Return, that's how. Diane was just there to move the plot along, and here somehow Admiral Holdo is even more of a plot convenience than that, where plot convenience was the whole point of the character. Just incredible. And it's sad in a way because I guess this applies to Benicio del Toro as well. Like, out of context, seems like a really good bit of casting.
Sure. Yeah.
Both for Star Wars and this character. But what they do with her from the outset is so limited and annoying and counterproductive that it's a waste of a
really good actor.
Really good actor and someone who could have really done good stuff in Star Wars as well.
Because she has that speech and then she browbeats Poe.
Right. And this is the other problem here is, like, again, trigger happy flyboy. It's like, this is new. This is not what Poe was established as. This is what you want him to be for the purposes of this story. This quarter story.
Well, I think part of that goes back to what we were saying in the last movie, because the trigger happy portion of it sounds kind of like Han Solo. And we said in the last episode that he's part Han Solo, but he's also part Luke Skywalker. He's got more than one character. Yeah. Kind of in his surrogate life, and so it's not all of his personality.
I feel like they're relitigating Han Solo through this characterization. Which is unfair both to Poe
and to Han Solo,
because he's not there to defend himself. And let's face it, they're gonna do it again in the next movie. Yeah. In fact, that's all they're gonna do in the next movie because it's called Solo.
Well, then we find Rose crying.
But here's around the point, at least in my notes, where we are introduced to Rose. Rose Tico. I feel like when you come upon a character that you're introducing for the first time crying, it's basically all over before it begins. Right. This isn't a legacy character, but again, we're introducing a character at
their absolute worst moment,
with no identifiably redeeming characteristics, especially when you compare it to their, the original version of this character, who was this kind of hero pilot. Yeah. She's just the person that lives in the shadow of that person. which makes it very hard to engage with her.
Yeah, I agree.
In the same way that, you know, in war movies, when, you know, the wife of the dead pilot, you know, appears on screen, you know, it's like, let's make the movie about her. No, I don't think that's gonna work. Somehow, I think she needs to go home.
Yeah.
And we need to get on with the other pilots going back up in planes.
The only thing you need to see is her back at the door as the general drives away, and they get back to the movie.
But it made me think, like, I admire emotional transparency in life, but I don't admire it in
film
fiction.
Yeah.
I feel like the better way to write characters so that they serve the story and that you as a viewer can...
If she's masking it.
Yeah, is like... And there's an example of that in the original Star Wars. Like, Leia never cries for her planet.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's been criticized because Luke reacts to this Obi-Wan, this man he's known for 2 days, and he's all mopey about it, and she just gets on with it. But think about how we relate to Rose versus how we relate to Leia. There's definitely something in the stoicism of Leia that we as an audience can engage with more than someone who's just, like, crying or falling apart at any given time.
Well,
which, as I said, is fine for a human to be, because especially in this world, because it's the natural reaction to everything that happens in daily life now. And I'm not one of these people who's like, you just suck it up and, you know, not express emotion. Not at all. But in drama, I kind of like my characters to hold it back.
Well, it's not just that though. Like, it actually,
and they can earn emotional transparency.
If she was more stoic, it actually lends better to what they want to do in the scene, because Finn is trying to escape, and she susses him out, and if her sussing him out and angrily shocking him comes out of a place of you're trying to walk out of here while I'm stoically doing my job in the face of my sister dying, go fuck yourself. But, you know, and gives him the shock. It all lends to that, I think, a little bit better.
It's a modern writing trope and of you know, making. And you can do it. You can do it in certain contexts. Of course, you can if you're representing certain kinds of characters. But if you're going back to these age-old legacy characters who were built a different way, you've got to kind of honor the system of representation as well.
Yeah,
you know, it goes back to like the difference between New Trek and Star Trek. It's like, yeah, you know, the showing like mental health problems on screen is a good thing for self-identification on screen, but it sucks in the middle of a Star Trek where everyone should be doing
their job. Right. Yes.
Right. It's like Captain Burnham is never gonna outdo Captain Picard, not because he's a middle-aged white cis man, and she's not, but because of the way that the characters are written differently.
Sure. And Star Trek
one is serving the story you're telling, and the other isn't.
And Star Trek has always been kind of naval-based.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say Star Wars is too. Star Wars is Air Force, I suppose. Sure. But it's military, right? And the military are not famous.
Who are the Marines?
Yeah. The military aren't famously known for sharing lots of feelings in the middle of battle. You know, that's the point of the military. It's a different entity. And that, you know, the harm that it actually befalls soldiers by shutting off that part of themselves is the byproduct of that, and that in itself is interesting. But
I think that's an even better argument, that these are generically war movies and they should observe those
rules as well.
Yeah. And but even within the character that they've created, it's yet another misfit with quirky, self-portraying dialogue, and I just feel like again this is what we have actresses do in fantasy series now, and just seems like a huge waste of time for them and for us.
I agree.
And also, how has Rose become a fan of Finn in has Finn become a legend in mere minutes?
Right.
I mean, I was balking at Han Solo being a legend after 30 years, but she's already a fangirl of him, and as I understand it, no time has passed.
Yes, exactly. So that's the problem, is that she's looking at Finn as though the 2 years have passed in the time of the movie being made.
That's it, isn't it?
Whereas narratively, this story picks up right where the last one ends. So,
Such a weird decision.
yeah, there's no way she could know.
How did she even know who? How has word even got around that quickly about what he
To
did?
the bowels of the ship. She's like, she's checking crates and shit, right?
And I feel really sorry for Finn here because he gets shocked and he can't feel his teeth. So within the space of like an hour, he went from the hero of the last movie to Jar Jar Binks in this one.
Yeah, I know.
It's the same thing. Like Jar Jar Binks gets his tongue numbed. It's kind of playing the same role here,
Yeah.
which, given the racial problems with Jar Jar Binks, is not a good look with your only black lead actor.
Right.
Is to make them the Jar Jar Binks of this story.
Well, then we get our MacGuffin, because they got to disable the tracker, and that means they have to find the code breaker. So Poe starts making his plan, right?
Yeah. Well, he seems as confused about the plan as the audience is, because he keeps asking a lot of questions about. Like, they try and almost make a dramatic conflict about the fact that there's no rational reason why they should be doing any of this.
Well, there's certainly not a real reason story-wise, because we're going to come back to this 45 minutes later to not have to just get caught and not even be able to use the thing that they want.
There's also in this scene, there's the cutaway to Leia in the hospital bed, and it made me think immediately of, well, both Halloween 2s, or 2 of the 3 Halloween 2s. And it's also Carrie Fisher is a Nepo baby too.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's they're sort of like I say obviously they could not have foreseen her sudden death, right?
Of course.
But even if the plan, which I don't really believe, was to make the third movie all about her suddenly out of nowhere, as we've been told by various people involved in these movies. Which is it's an interesting, that's a good argument to make when you can't prove otherwise because the person's dead. But it would still seem a waste of her in this movie to spend most of it in bed.
Yeah, right.
With everything else, like, if you're gonna have Leia in the movie, don't have her be Laurie Strode Halloween 2.
But that's what I mean. They made this narrative decision, and it feels like they hired Laura Dern as Holdo to kind of fill the gap of Carrie Fisher, which is weird because you still have Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just like we need a break from Leia, whereas if everyone else is going, we haven't really seen enough of Leia. Right. I don't think anyone is saying we've seen too much of her. Well, and I don't know how fit she was to take on a lead role in the movie at that stage of her life as well.
Now, I believe after this kind of conversation of the codebreaker, we go back to, this is the first time Rey sees Kylo in their minds.
The teleconference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started labeling them as mind humps.
Mind humps. Well, they're not really. It's more sort of like forced blind dating. Forced video dating.
Forced video speed dating.
Yeah. And I think this sort of just the way that they play at this point sort of makes sense within the Force we know. And again, we don't know at this point.
That's the one thing. Like, I have to admit that this seems to be a new Force thing that we've never seen before. But to me, I also think between this movie and the next movie, they also kind of forged that it's just different for these two characters. I think even there's a reference at one point that.
Well, it's Snoke. Snoke's doing it. You can tell he was a clone of Palpatine because this was his plan all along.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All of this is Snoke. Snoke is behind all of this.
That's right.
Force connection, which is another layer of it that makes it easier to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And they think they're doing it organically because they're so connected to each other. It's just this aging disco dancer who's like, melding their minds together.
The strings.
Yeah. Boo! Boo! I love these dark crystal nuns, as I call them. I don't know what they're called. The caretakers. They're fantastic. It's this this note of Jim Henson-esque creature
yes, very
design
much so.
that
Yeah,
is like at the fringes of the movie, and I'm just like, and I'm drawn to it in a way I'm not drawn to other parts of the movie. I mean, I think everything in this part of the movie is fine, is interesting, but I'd much rather have followed them for a little bit longer.
yeah, because I like that every time.
And again, they have an arc, right? They're like constantly.
Rey's always fucking something up that they have to fix, and they kind of always do look at it like those four-legged creatures in the Dark Crystal, sort of. Okay, ho hum, gotta keep moving.
Yeah. And I have a little bit of a problem. It's a funny line when Rey says, when he asks what's the Force is about, and he says, moving rocks.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, she says. It's just hard to believe that's what Rey, even at this stage, thinks the Force
Make
is.
things float.
It feels like it's playing her at the bottom of her intelligence just to get to the gag.
Mm-hmm. But that's what I mean about the humor in these movies. So much of the humor in these movies is cheap, and it comes at the expense of developing character. Same thing with Kylo Ren and all the tantrums.
Yeah. I think you're right. I love seeing Luke as a teacher, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's sort of like a hippie teacher, basically, isn't he? Because he's learned enough about the subject to then spend his life dedicating his life to shitting on what he was taught.
Yeah.
Which is like, he's like the classic hippie teacher. And then this nature documentary montage, which comes completely out of left field. Like it feels like a revolution in style of the series. Like it's the most experimental thing you've seen in a Star Wars movie, stylistically, I think, up until this point. You see the grass sprouting from the earth. And,
right.
You feel like you're about to be sold some kind of charity campaign.
Bill of goods.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I like it, but I respect it.
Okay.
I think it's like, well, no one else is taking these chances.
Yeah.
Stylistically in the series, especially not J.J. Abrams.
Be honest, if you could tie an anchor to J.J. Abrams' legs and throw him overboard, would you? I think you might.
No.
I think you'd commit murder.
No, then I'd never get the chance to sue him.
For your treatment? The famous treatment?
Exactly. The famous treatment. See, even you've heard of it. Well, I want to talk about some of the content of what Luke is teaching because.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a note
right.
that the light explanation is pretty good stuff.
That is like it feels like the Force as we were introduced to it.
Yes, exactly.
The way he's describing it. But also he's presenting the Jedi as they were presented to us, whether knowingly or not, that they abuse their moral authority, and their hubris led to the Empire taking over the galaxy. I just love that. Yeah, and I love that because again, it's like without attacking George Lucas directly, it's a way of kind of referring to what we saw in the prequels and making that connect with what we know now. In a way that feels organic and linked. It's like, maybe the Jedis were. And in the context of this Jedi who's got he's got an axe to grind with the Jedi. Like, so we don't have to buy into
that part.
It,
I did really like because I liked the idea of that idealistic.
It makes a lot of sense.
Kid, and then learning who the Jedi were. and realizing, like what we thought during those prequels, these guys are kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Where it was like the Nixon White House during Watergate
yes,
for
exactly,
a while.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's what he's referring to here. That's what Johnson's channeling through his voice. I think is the idea that it's the Jedi's hubris that is as culpable for what happened.
Right.
But we can also walk it back. Like, we have deniability, and I like that too, because, that we can't settle on that.
Right.
But we can entertain it as a possibility. Yeah, so you were saying, Finn, we're back with Finn.
Finn and Rose are going to
Finn and Rose's
blip
side quest.
Quite easily, and all they have to do is tell Leia it was something else, and she'll buy that, and for some reason, the New Order don't care. A lot of convenient storytelling.
The First Order.
Sorry.
Once again,
God damn it.
not new wave 80s band New Order.
You know what flashed in my mind?
It would be a bet.
Because I was going to say the Empire, and then I said New Order, and I was like, nailed it.
I got at least one of those right. Yeah, this is effectively this is the second of the two side quest quadrants.
Yeah. But I was very offended at this one because we spend a lot of time on this planet to have it not matter at all narratively.
Well, the thing is, it's established in the previous scene where they have to explain it to Poe several times for it to make sense. That essentially they're seeking a MacGuffin.
Yes, right.
So you're kind of into it, going, okay, well, I don't like the fact that they're pursuing a MacGuffin, but as long as they get the MacGuffin,
I'll be okay. Yeah,
then
right.
They'll have achieved their side quest, and we can
move on with the story.
They don't get their MacGuffin.
Right.
So we'll talk about that, because this is only beginning here.
Right.
But to me, this seemed like this was basically a comic book or a digital minisode that didn't belong in the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
This whole story.
I think it's
like this could have been explored through a TV series, anything.
Right.
They didn't have that vehicle at the time, but literally any other media is right for this story than a episode of the Skywalker saga.
Yeah, part of it too seems like, well, we gotta have Finn do something, and so they added this for him.
But why this?
Yeah, I agree.
Because also the thing I noticed this time was that if anyone didn't need a lesson in war profiteering, it's a man who was formerly a child soldier.
Yeah, right.
So even the idea that Finn somehow needed to learn this lesson is bogus.
Agreed.
And weird, because it's sort of like, shouldn't the people in Space Monte Carlo be learning this lesson, not the victims of it,
right?
Who already know their lives are fucked because of these people. And yet the film's telling us that he needs to understand what's going on here. But I'm thinking, well, if anyone understands what's going on, it's someone who spent their life having been. If anyone understands the military industrial complex, it's
somebody kidnapped as a
soldier.
Child and forced to be a soldier.
Yeah. You don't have to tell that person. You don't have to. You don't have to work hard to convince that person that a military industrial complex exists.
They know
in the world. And then obviously we get Porgs on the Falcon, which is great.
Yes.
The Porg who nesting in the Falcon, who looks down the barrels of the camera, is like Christmas special kind of, holiday special kind of level.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Makes me laugh.
It is good stuff.
We get a second mind hump.
Well, this is interesting because this is where Ben gives his side of the story, right?
Yeah. So.
And we get his first, which I forgot.
Well, I think we get Luke first. We get.
No. It's because she goes accusingly to Luke, saying
that's right. Okay, so we do get Kylo Ren's.
I
first.
thought it. I remembered it being the other way around,
okay.
But yeah, it's Ben first, and it's Johnson. Turns this movie into Rashomon.
Mm-hmm.
He's an indie director. He wants to fuck shit up. give you a... Because if you think about it, like Star Wars, all the way back, you know, through the prequels, through the original trilogy, it's Manichean storytelling. There's a very clear right and wrong, black and white.
Well, that's part of my problem. You know, and I think this is just how films are made today, because they can't help themselves but to show the flashback. And wouldn't it be more interesting to just
can't argue with that?
See hear the characters tell their story, both with conviction, him and Luke.
Oh yeah.
And then you have to decide for yourself who's telling the truth.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, in terms of representation, but I like the idea of these kind of contrasting viewpoints of what happened.
Right.
Because and that it's not, you know, like Rashomon, it's not resolved. It's just like, well, we have a basic idea of what was happened, but
it also it
doesn't fall down on either side.
It reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It reminds me from a certain point of view, and everybody has their own certain. You know what I mean? It's that idea of Kylo Ren waking up and seeing Luke above him. You know, he could build his memory out from there about the menace and you know, he's projecting what he thinks Luke was thinking, that kind of thing. Yeah. So
I think, you know, I feel like it's an opportune moment to sort of complicate the storytelling and make the characters more complex than they've been, and you know that was what Empire Strikes Back was trying to do as well, and I think that's part of the role of the second act of the trilogy is to do that. Attack of the Clones as well. I'm sure you'll agree. I'll take that laughter as a yes.
You can take that laughter as a how dare you.
Yeah, I did.
Well, don't we meet DJ now?
Well, we're off to Cantabite, which is what we've been referring to as Space Monte Carlo. And I got to tell you that even within this weak link in the story, the actual social satire that they're doing is as weak as it gets. Like,
oh yeah,
there are political cartoonists who would find this broad.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll be like, oh, too on the nose.
Right.
And I guess that like their excuse for this is, well, we need another cantina. Each movie has to have a cantina.
We need a 1%er cantina, and that's Planet Monte Carlo.
So this is one of the Johnson big swings that really, you know, misses.
Yeah.
Because he's run with this idea of let's have another cantina scene and gone with this just so broad and I mean beyond cartoonish. Cartoonish is an insult.
Yes,
you know,
right.
I want to tar with that brush.
It feels
Looney Tunes is like 100 times smarter than anything
everything
here.
that happens here feels like a child's drawing.
Yes. Including the leprechaun alien, which I think is worse than any creature we saw in the prequels.
Agreed.
Wow! Didn't see that coming. Yeah. Wow! Whew, you really hate Cantabite.
I'll take Watto over this fucking nonsense.
Whoa! This is a big day for the Everything Sequel podcast. See this? And the other thing is that, like, I assume the creature design here is really good, like every other aspect of the design in the movie, but I can't tell because of how bad the style is. So there's a dealer who looks like the Hood from Thunderbirds, and it's not necessarily because he's a bad puppet. It might be, but given that all the other puppets in the movie and across this trilogy are uniformly excellent.
Right.
I think it's a fact that they all have to put them in tuxedos that's the problem.
Might be. You might be right.
It's like, if everything has to be in a tuxedo, it's not going to look as good as the way it was created to look.
Yeah, I mean, even just, you know, in the writing with all the casino jokes that they're going for. I mean, they're just...
It's generous, yeah.
It's so tiresome.
Generous to call them jokes.
Agreed.
Also, the fake 1940s Hollywood codebreaker.
Nah.
To me, that's, you know, if you're gonna throw stones at Dexter's Diner, you can't live in the glass house of Cantabite.
All right.
This. I mean, that feels to me way more of a kind of reach into real world history.
Yeah. Now, I want to get your read on this because you mentioned something earlier that made me, and I think you're right in terms of the character, and he has absolutely nothing to do. Yet, Benicio del Toro, I think he's such a good actor that he can just fit. He feels to me like he fits in this world really well. Like, in terms of his acting, he doesn't have anything to do, but I think he's quite good in this movie. You don't like him at all.
Did I? Am I in Sliders? Did I just kind of pass into a parallel universe? This is one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a movie.
No, come on.
The stuttering?
Well,
honestly, I've taken screenshots. The
only thing I don't like is the stuttering. If he took out the stuttering,
well, that's all there is. I've taken screenshots of Benicio del Toro, and if you hadn't seen the movie and you were asked what movie is this from, you'd probably guess a sci-fi reboot of the Ernest series.
No, I think
because he's continually mugging at camera, like Don Knotts. It's a horribly written character as well.
I think that's the biggest problem is he's a horribly written character. So I am surprised that he could get like that. He just seems to fit into the world. That's how he seems to me.
I don't agree. I think it's one of the worst performances in Star Wars.
Oh.
I think it should have worked, but I think he's off his game and the writing's off its game. And that combination to me is...
I don't think he's off his game. I think the writing is very much off the game.
I mean, the last film we
Except
saw
for
him
the
in
stutter.
was Shay Part 2.
I know.
With Shay Part 2. I cannot think of two more different performances.
Yeah, I mean, I just chalk up...
And only one of them shows me that this person is capable of acting. Only one of those two performances.
Oh, I disagree completely.
It's the worst possible introduction to Benicio del Toro you could get, I think.
He seems so laid back and into the world.
Does he? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to agree on. I think we have to agree to disagree on this one.
Okay, fine, but
I guess we can both agree that the character's horribly written.
Horribly.
You're not going to pretend.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's awful.
Terrible.
He has no redeeming characteristics. No. And you know the worst part of him not having any redeeming characteristics is? The movie wants you to believe that he does for a little while.
Yeah, I know.
And I think that's worse.
That was the most
if he was going to be a
offensive
shitbag,
thing to me
he should have been a
the
shitbag
first
the whole
time
way
I
through.
saw this movie. But on this go-around, I thought, he's just like laying in this movie. Like, he's just like, he's on a raft going down the river.
You and I have a different definition of laying because he's kind of like, he's looking at camera as if he's just eaten like a sour lemon candy.
I guess maybe I gravitate towards him a little bit more because surrounding him, I've got BB-8 with fucking slot jokes, and I've got opera alien jokes, and I've got fucking herd rides and cliff dives and so much fucking nonsense and bullshit.
Well, I mean, there's so much nonsense and bullshit. I love the fact that at the beginning of every scene in the Cantabite story quadrant, we have to restack what the characters are doing there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you have to restack at the top of every scene why they're there, you're not tracking this properly.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's talk about let's also talk about the fact that DJ is not the person they're looking for.
Right.
He's not the code breaker they're looking for. So it's not even a logical course of action within this stray tangent of the film. It's a tangent within a tangent.
Do we ever learn that they actually needed Justin Theroux? Was he the guy they needed but didn't get?
No, and they... Yes. Define need.
Well, yeah,
because,
right.
a reminder, none of this pays off.
I know.
They were better off without him, if anything.
Yeah, right.
So
dumb.
Also, his look, Benicio del Toro's look, he looks like he's come from a senior home version of Newsies. Like a community center Newsies production featuring older actors.
I was thinking he looked like a homeless newsie.
Yeah, I'll buy that too. But the BB-8 firing the shot coins is such a desperate attempt to make this pointless trip count for something.
Well, failed.
But the thing is, like, well, absolutely, and you know, the indignity doesn't end there, because having left the casino, we got to ride through it back on space horseback.
I know. And at one point,
That's
that starts
the bit
looking
that really
like
gets me.
Mulder and Scully in the cornfield of X-Files. When the ships are start looking for him and shit.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, listen, I love cute space animals. I'm all over the porgs. We'll get to it, but I love the crystal critters as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a sucker for a cute animal. These Favias, I think they're called, which sounds like Hank Hill's rival propane salesman. Favias! But I don't get, like, apart from that, what am I supposed to be excited about? The movie plays it as if there's some kind of Disney-esque joy that these animals are being released and storming a casino.
Yeah, right.
I'm just like, this is all irrelevant.
Yeah, none of it matters.
This has no bearing on the movie I'm watching at all. I mean, you know, we complained about the tentacle nonsense in the first film. That looks like fucking B-plot compared to
absolutely.
this. There's not even a letter of the alphabet that you could apply to this plot. And they even try and do... Again, it's like trying to... The worst thing about this is trying to insult... It's Freudian slip. Insert real filmmaking into this. Because they attempt to do like a parallel editing bit with the ship landing. Like they're in fucking Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you think it's the police and it turns out to be Benicio del Toro and BB-8 full of coins.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just like... What the fuck is your problem? If you're gonna do this stupid tangent, stop trying to inject real filmmaking in there, because that's doubly annoying when you do that.
Well, and the other thing I got on this go around was I honestly remembered it as we went to Planet Monte Carlo and we were just there for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But there is some cutting back and forth. You get a third mind hump or a fourth mind hump, kind of, from...
Oh, yeah. Shirtless Ren.
Yeah, from Shirtless Ren.
It's one of the best moments in the film. Can you put a shirt on? And again, like, we both said this in the ranking episode, but there's not much of a through line in these three films, but the kind of development of their sexual tension is. And this is where you it's done in quite a restrained, almost Jane Austen way,
right?
With it's just like she sees him she sees him shirtless. It's like she sort of found him at the lake.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Cutting wood.
He was bathing,
splitting wood.
Yeah, exactly. She saw him with his shirt off, and that's until they kiss at the end of the next film, they have no more sexual contact.
Yes.
So it's like, it's kind of there's this sort of kind of Edwardian romance going on underneath the surface of the film, and I really like it. Like, it's what I respond to most of the original content.
I'm hesitant to ask you. I want to ask you a question about the mind humps, because I think I think Rian Johnson starts with an idea in this movie, but God help me, Tom, I think J.J. Abrams figures out how to film it better in the next film. And what do you think? Because he seems to be always keeping them kind of separate. We're going back from their separate locations. It's filmed as though they're in the same room, but they're showing the different locations. J.J. Abrams in the next film puts them in the same location.
Okay.
But he constructs that idea that they can't see what their surroundings. They just see each other.
Yeah.
And I like that in the next film. And it actually plays a narrative point in that movie. So that ends up working well, I think. Thoughts?
Until it becomes teleportation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I feel all of this is... but I think this all tracks visually.
It all tracks visually.
From this film.
But I like the next one better.
Okay. Yeah, this part of the movie gets better until it gets worse and then unwatchable.
Okay.
When they start, pulling beads through space.
Yeah.
That's when I tap out.
Okay.
But everything up to there, I think, is really... This whole idea is very compelling.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we are about out of time. So does that mean we should...
For which episode?
For this first half of our episode on The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Does that mean, I think, should we save the cave?
Save the cave. That's our new campaign. Save the cave.
How much do you have to say about this cave?
Well, it's a lot like the lady from Shanghai with the mirror rays. The only thing I remarked was that, like, to be fair to J.J. Abrams, you can see this coming.
Oh my!
Pulling him back out of the water, slowly. This dream doesn't necessarily mean her parents are a couple of nobodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could retrofit it just as easily to say that she realizes she's dreaming that she's a clone, because she is a clone.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no, like, center to her because she's a process of... And, well, it's difficult to say, who undid whose idea of what Rey's parents was, but...
Right.
I don't think this leads you one way or another, and I think it's been commented that, oh, well, it's clearly set up in this dream sequence. It's like, well, first of all, it's a dream sequence, so nothing's set up.
Right.
But secondly, you can still go either way on it. And earlier on, we mentioned the line about, being drawn to the dark side, and I always thought that left it open for her having Sith heritage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, of all the things that typically annoy people about this storyline, I feel it's relatively open at this point.
Yeah, I guess the thing I always found interesting about this cave thing is I juxtapose it with Luke's walk into his dark cave. And I always wondered, is each Jedi's... You only have these 2 points of comparison, though. And I want to see more Jedis in more caves.
Yeah.
I want to know how different it is for each Jedi. And...
Yeah.
Because it seems as though... Luke had to face the Vader of himself, and then he just walks out of the cave. It's intimated here that Rey might not have ever gotten out of this cave.
Yeah.
Without help, and so I guess I wonder how prevalent or how different it is for each Jedi inside of these, the caves that the journey they must take.
Yes.
Was I frozen?
You were frozen, but that's okay. You were talking about does every Jedi have to do this? Is it the same for every Jedi?
Yeah.
Is this part of the Jedi trials kind of thing?
Yeah, right.
Is this because that's the weird thing, is like all we've seen very little of the Jedi's formal training.
Mm-hmm.
Like the content of the actual sessions beyond, can you tell that there's a speeder on the other side of this iPad?
Yeah, right.
Which, to me, that's a telepathy test, but is that it?
Right.
That's just Bill Murray at the beginning of Ghostbusters.
Couple of wavy lines.
A couple of... Only 75 more to go. That's all I had to say about the cave.
She gets in the middle of another mind hump in that cave with Kylo?
I think you're remembering more mind humps than there are throughout the course of the movie.
Well, I said it's kind of a mind hump.
I don't even know if I agree with your characterization. You think she's mind humped in the cave?
Is she? Because I wrote down
I mean,
that Rey goes into the cave and there's kind of a mind hump and Luke separates.
maybe before. Yeah, maybe Kylo. She talks to Kylo. Is it before? Yeah, it's before she knows. She still thinks Luke's the villain. Right at this point.
I think she's already gotten Luke's story at this point. I have that in my notes up above.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, that's all I have to say about it. I've got a lot more to say about Puppet Force Ghost Yoda, so we should probably break before we talk about that.
All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the first half of The Last Jedi, and we're going to be back next week to finish it out.
Like Snoke, we're cutting these episodes in two,
In half.
right down the middle. That's right. Ironically, though, we won't talk about that until halfway through the second episode.
Until next week. You're going to have to wait. What can I say?
At this point, Snoke could still survive. He could probably survive anyway, because as I understand, he's a bunch of clones.
Is that ever truly explained?
No!
I don't think so.
No. It's not. We see Snoke in a tank and we draw our own conclusions.
All right, fine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the first half of The Last Jedi. We're going to be back next week. Thank you for listening. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. We will be back. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
I hope that big-ass door holds.
All right.